There was a time when Earth did not belong to just one kind of human. If you walked across the planet 50,000 years ago, you would not have found just us. You might have crossed paths with someone shorter, stronger, built for cold. Someone with a heavy brow and a low skull carrying a spear meant for animals twice their size. On a remote island, you might have found humans barely a meter tall, sharing space with giant birds and dwarf elephants. And somewhere in Siberia, in caves, we would not excavate for another 100,000 years. Another kind of human left behind nothing but a finger bone and a tooth. Today, none of them remain, only us. Not the strongest, not the oldest, not even the one that survived the longest. Just the last one standing, which raises an uncomfortable question. What happened to everyone else? For most of human history, being human was not one thing. It was a family, messy, branching, experimental. Evolution did not build a human once and stop. It kept trying. Different bodies, different brains, different tools, different answers to the same dangerous planet. And one by one, every other branch disappeared. There was no single moment when the world chose Homo sapiens. No final battle, no clean ending. Instead, it looks like a slow disappearance. Small populations breaking apart, climates shifting faster than bodies could adapt, food vanishing, new competitors arriving, groups mixing, groups dying, and sometimes, maybe, just bad luck. Start with Homo erectus, because they were not some failed early draft. In some ways, they were among the most successful humans who ever lived. They appeared roughly 2 million years ago, with long legs and short arms, a body built for walking and running across open land. They were likely the first humans to leave Africa, spreading across Asia and surviving for a length of time that should make us nervous. Longer than Homo sapiens has existed. Much longer. They made tools. They hunted and scavenged across changing environments for well over 1 million years. And then, the last known population, on the island of Java, disappeared somewhere around 108,000 to 117,000 years ago. We don't know exactly why. Maybe isolation. Maybe a changing world moving faster than they could follow. Maybe newer humans simply outcompeted them. But the lesson arrives early. Surviving for a long time does not mean surviving forever. Then there are the Neanderthals, the ones people think they already understand. For decades they were painted as slow, brutish, half-formed. That picture is wrong. Neanderthals were not failed humans. They were a different answer to the same problem. How do you survive an ice age? Their bodies were powerful and compact, built to conserve heat. They hunted large animals up close, a dangerous way to live. Their skeletons often show injuries similar to modern rodeo riders. They used fire. They made tools. They likely cared for their injured. They were people of another kind, and they survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, around 40,000 years ago, they disappear from the fossil record. The old explanation was simple. We arrived, we were smarter, we won. The real answer is messier. Neanderthal populations were small and scattered, the kind of populations that can be erased by nothing more dramatic than a bad winter or a low birth rate sustained too long. Some late populations show low genetic diversity, suggesting vulnerability that predates any contact with Homo sapiens. Add unstable climate. Add a new competitor with wider social networks and faster spreading ideas. Not necessarily smarter, just more flexible in the one way that mattered. Neanderthals may not have lost one great war. They may have lost 1,000 small ones against isolation, climate, and time. Then there are the Denisovans, barely more than ghosts. No skulls, no burials. Their entire discovery began with a single finger bone in a Siberian cave, too small to look like it could rewrite anything. But the DNA inside it belonged to something new. Not Neanderthal, not us. Denisovans may have ranged across a huge stretch of Asia, but their fossil record is almost nothing. A finger bone, a jaw fragment, a few teeth. And yet their genetic footprint is enormous. Some populations in Asia and Oceania still carry Denisovan DNA today. Tibetans inherited a gene tied to high-altitude survival directly from them, a vanished species still quietly helping living people breathe thin mountain air. The youngest confirmed Denisovan fossil is around 40,000 years old, with some genetic hints suggesting survival until perhaps 30,000 years ago. After that, nothing. Were they absorbed into incoming populations, outcompeted, broken apart by shifting climates? We don't know. And because so little physical evidence survives, their extinction remains one of the foggiest chapters in the entire human story. Sometimes a species can vanish so completely that nothing is left behind but fragments and code. Then there's the strangest one of all, Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbits of Flores Island in Indonesia. Standing barely a meter tall, with small brains and small bodies, they survived alongside giant birds, Komodo dragons, and dwarf elephants. For a while, scientists doubted they were even a real species. But the evidence held, a separate human species, shaped by island life. Islands do strange things to evolution. Large animals shrink, small animals grow, a phenomenon called island dwarfism. Their fossils date roughly between 100,000 and 60,000 years ago, with tools linked to them as recent as 50,000 years ago, uncomfortably close to when modern humans began moving through the region. We still don't know exactly why they disappeared. Climate change on the island, declining prey, volcanic disruption, pressure from arriving Homo sapiens. On a small island, you don't need a global catastrophe. A chain of local problems is enough to erase an entire species. They weren't competing for the whole planet. They were just trying to survive one island. Even that wasn't safe. So why did we survive when they didn't? It's tempting to say we were simply smarter. But Neanderthals were intelligent. Denisovans adapted to brutal environments. Homo erectus outlasted us by a wide margin. Homo floresiensis survived conditions that would terrify a modern human. Intelligence alone doesn't explain it. The more likely answer is connection. Homo sapiens appear to have been unusually good at building large, overlapping social networks, not just families or small bands, but wide webs of people, tools, and ideas. If one group failed, another could carry the knowledge forward. If one region turned hostile, people could move. If one tool worked, it could spread far beyond the valley where it was invented. That may be our real advantage, not the individual brain, but the network between brains. Other human species likely had culture too. But ours may have traveled farther, adapted faster, and connected more people, right when the planet needed exactly that kind of resilience. Even so, we weren't destined to win. Luck mattered. Geography mattered. Timing and population size mattered. We may have survived partly because we were adaptable, and partly because we happened to be in the right places, in the right numbers, at the right moments. The other humans were never stepping stones toward us. They weren't unfinished drafts waiting to become something better. They were their own experiments, their own histories, their own ways of being human. And now, they're gone. Homo erectus, after more than 1 million years. Neanderthals, after surviving an entire ice age. Denisovans, leaving behind only fragments and genetic echoes. Homo floresiensis, vanishing near the edge of our own arrival. Today, when we say human, we mean only Homo sapiens. But that's only because every other meaning disappeared. We are not the peak of a ladder. We're the last living branch of a tree that once had many. And maybe that should make us feel less superior, not more, because extinction doesn't only happen to the weak. It happens to the isolated, the unlucky, the outnumbered, the ones living through change too fast to survive. And if we're not careful, the last human species left could learn exactly the same lesson.